It's good to see so many familiar faces, and hopefully we'll see some new ones. I look forward to this Rebound live webcast every month to be with so many growth-minded individuals that support the Rebound community. We've all rebounded from something or will be rebounding from something in the future, and our goal is self-actualization, to reach our fullest potential to learn and grow. Today's topic's nuance. The art of leadership. And I changed this a couple weeks ago because I was reading the book, The Dichotomy of Leadership by Jocko Willink, who also did Extreme Ownership. And it talked about the nuances, the in-between, you know, the rule that's in place, but maybe you have to overlook it. And I've always struggled with that. I've always been a rules guy. Be on time, no cell phones in a meeting. How do you operate in the gray? Is it all black or white? When do you bend the rules? I have a hard time even saying that. When do you hold firm to your rules and regulations? When do you allow flexibility? So I just like to get an idea of what you all have experienced, how you deal with it. And I'll give you an example that I witnessed as an assistant coach. We had a great player at Kansas and who was a great leader, rules follower, did everything, our best player. And the rule was to be on the bus on time, and otherwise the bus is going to roll. Well, we're staying at a hotel, and this was Big 12 tournament time. The hotel was packed, the elevators were packed, unusually packed, and he comes to the bus like a minute or two late. And it created turmoil within the coach. You know, do I start him? Do I not start him? Do I penalize him? Do I not penalize him? What message will that send to the team? And it really set a tone that I think impacted our team, and we ended up losing the game. So those types of situations, you know, when do you ignore? When do you turn the other way? You know, those types of experiences. So tell me what you've experienced and what you would recommend in certain situations. Is it black or white? Is it, do you operate in the gray? When do you allow some flexibility with your rules and regulations? Anybody have any thoughts? Dave, what have you experienced? I know you run in SeaWorld in San Antonio. I'm sure there are times you had to discipline some people, and maybe there were some times where you held firm, and then sometimes you had to allow some exceptions.
Well, I think it all boils down to this. It boils down to this, Matt. I always view it as two ways. You're either measuring something objectively or subjectively. And something that you're measuring objectively has a clear criteria for success. Again, just to use a couple of examples, when you're playing golf, the ball is either in the hole or not in the hole. There's no shades of gray on that. Shades of gray come in when you decide, okay, we're going to do gimmies. Okay, well, how close? Is it 2 inches? Is it 4 inches within the letter? So what happens is, from a behavior standpoint, when you start changing the parameters and the rules, you create an environment that sets up what's referred to as scheduled induced aggression. You said I had to do X in order to be successful. And now for Johnny over there, you lowered the standard. And so you start irritating people when you change the standards from person to person. That sets up a perceived bias. And then, you like him better than me, et cetera, et cetera. So I always try to establish the fact that there are rules, and then there are parameters. Rules are meant to be followed specifically. There's a set criteria that everybody understands and agrees to. Parameters are the boundaries that you operate within. In managing my staff, my rules, my parameters were established as quality and safety. Within those parameters, I want you to do things your way. So you're bringing your personality into it. If you're a salesperson, your style, your method of communication, whether you smile or not smile, whether you tell a joke, whether you do it straight, that's your style. And as long as you're operating within established parameters, I'm going to allow you to bring your personality to it. You step outside the parameters, now, your butt is mine, because we've established clearly what those parameters would be. So I think it all depends upon the circumstance, which sounds like a cop-out, and it's not. But I think as long as everybody agrees to what is objectively measured and what is subjectively measured, it kind of alleviates some of the misunderstandings.
So before we get to Robert, I want to ask you a question. David, if you were the coach and you had a rule that the bus leaves on time and your star player who's been stellar, never missed anything, always on time, model A student, model A player, was a minute late because there was crowds, unusual crowds in the hotel, and the elevators were like operating 10, 15 minutes slow. What would you have done in that situation?
In that situation right there, I would have done a very quick hand check on the bus. Everybody, hey guys, we understand the situation is different. It wasn't, the parameters are slightly changed. What do you think? Right now, we close the doors and take off. Are you guys with me on that or not? And let the team make that decision so they understand that you're taking it into consideration and you're still going to make a policy, but I'm willing to adjust this policy right now because of the situation that we're all in, and I want you to be aware that we're all collectively making a decision.
Right. Thank you.
No debate, just a quick yes or no. Hands up, hands down. Simple as that.
I love it. We have 26 people on. Some people join late. Just a reminder, what we're talking about is the nuance, the art of leadership. And this is where I've struggled in the past, where I like things to be black or white. You're either on time or you're late, and there's no exceptions. But I love what David just said, rules versus parameters, and giving the team input, because there are exceptions. Hey, are you guys okay with this? And yes, and that's is that a cop-out? I mean, David, I go back to, the answer as a coach, that no one's going to turn on their teammate for being late.
Right. But the difference here, Matt, is the fact that if I open it up to everybody else, then it's a team rule, not a me rule.
Right.
And if I'm trying to get the team on board collectively, the team's going to make this decision.
Right.
Otherwise, it's just me.
Right. Yeah. Got you. All right. Thank you. That was awesome, Dave. Awesome. Loved it. Robert, welcome to Rebound Live Webcast. What are your thoughts on Nuance, the art of leadership? What have you experienced?
Well,
tell us, for the new people on the call, tell us your name and where do you work?
My name is Rob Schwagel, and I work at Cerity Partners in the Private Wealth Management Division.
Mm-hmm. All right.
In New York.
There you go. Thank you, Robert.
And I went to high school with Matt's brother, John.
There you go. Well, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. We all have stuff we got to put up with.
No apologies necessary.
Yeah.
No, we just had a recent nuance. One of my coworkers who's from Ukraine, he had to take a couple of weeks off because he had to fly into Kiev, get his mother and sister out of the country.
Oh, wow.
And so the head of our division just emailed us yesterday saying, Nikolai got his mother and sister, and they had to, cross the Polish border into Poland, and now they're heading over to Spain. So, but, we needed him desperately, but hey, when family issues arise, this guy's not thinking about work. He's thinking about saving his family's life. So, and, the boss said, hey, take as much time as you need.
Yeah, no,
you got to take care of your family.
That's to me, that's common sense. There's really no decision there. And I think, that's human rights, human nature. Chuck, what do you got, Chuck? Chuck from.
Yeah. Hey, Matt, I was just going to say, you talking about that situation where the bus and everything like that. And, me being the unbelievable athlete as a youth and right up until today, one of the common threads that was always told to me, that the individual is not greater than the team. And I think no matter what you do, whether it's in athletics or in the real world, in business, I think that's an important aspect that people got to remember. You've got to be understanding that there are other people a lot of times involved, and you're just one cog in the wheel. And I think that breeds success if you put that in the back of your mind when you're working with others.
Mm-hmm.
That was just the kind of thought I had by you talking about that
Yeah.
bus analogy.
Yeah, no, I mean, you just think now with the nuance in the work from home, the hybrid, if you push them too hard to come back to the office, they may quit. So, I think the key is being flexible. But I like Dave's terms of rules versus parameters. And I think a lot of it is, the team rules versus your rules. One thing that in one of these books by Jocko Willink, they talked about, you can't put the man over the mission, and that's where sometimes we give people a break. We feel bad. We don't want to fire them. We don't want to move them on. But does that inhibit the mission? And I think that's kind of the nuance part of it as well. Welcome in Brian Moran. Brian, just state your name, what you do, where you're living, so some new viewers can know who you are better.
Sure, Brian Moran. I'm in northern New Jersey in Bergen County, and I have my own companies, Brian Moran and Associates and Small Business Edge. It's interesting, Matt. As a leader, you need to see the big picture. And I can remember a couple of times where I had to do something very difficult, but I knew that it was in the big picture the best thing for the team. And that is fire your best salesperson. Fire your best salesperson because they've made it impossible for the team to win. They always put themselves above the team. And they almost become a cancer. Nobody on the team likes that person. Yes, they produce, but they've created extenuating circumstances, almost two sets of rules. Mm-hmm. The rules for the star salesperson and then the rules for everybody else. And you say, the rest of the team is underperforming because of this one player. They're not rising to their capabilities. And it's amazing what happens when you get rid of that star salesperson, how everybody else starts to grow.
And how do you base your decision? This goes back to, I think, previous meetings we've had where that's to me why you have core values.
Yes.
That's the rudder that steers the ship during the rough seas.
Yeah.
Touch on that, Brian.
We'll repeat that again. I missed that last part.
Yeah, no, I think that's where you have to rely on your core values.
Yes.
And
The path that you set out, saying that here are our core values, and if we follow them and if we practice them, then this is where we'll be able to get to. That we'll be able to achieve our goals, right? That's the whole idea, that you've set out this plan for the team. You want to win the championship. You want to hit your sales goals. You want to achieve your goals as a company. And the leader, it's important for the leader to see that big picture. So we might be in the second quarter of the year, finishing up the first quarter, but a leader is looking at the third and fourth quarter saying, why are we starting to go off course? Why are we, if we continue on this path, we're not going to hit our goals. Mm-hmm. And people may be telling you, they may not be telling you that you have a problem on your team, that there's one person who seems to get their own set of rules. Yep. That they're allowed to be late, that they're allowed to miss things, that they're allowed to work from home. Everybody else is expected. But, the understanding is that, well, they're the star salesperson or the star marketer or whoever they are, and they can get away with it. What happens there is you start to get that imbalance on the team. It's like the one player who hogs the ball, shoots 90% of the time.
Yep.
And everybody else underperforms while they're maybe either performing at level or over. But God forbid they have a bad quarter or a bad game, then nobody does well. Like then you start to look and say, well, why are we failing? Why are we losing? And it's only when you can look at your situation from the clouds, like from 20,000 feet, you look at it. Sometimes it's a star player. Sometimes it's your biggest customer. Mm-hmm. you know, that I've told clients, you need to fire your client
Right.
because they're a cancer to your team. Nobody likes working with them. You know, they're condescending, they're belligerent, and yet you accept it because of what they mean to your team right now.
Mm-hmm.
And the fear is if you get rid of them, everything else is going to die.
Yep.
When in fact, everything else will thrive.
Yep. No, it's like taking weeds out of the garden.
Yeah.
Marleen Jansen, did I say that right? I've been practicing Jansen. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
Yes,
you
we
did.
want to Americanize your last name and say Jansen, but it's Jansen.
Yeah.
All
And
right.
it's Marleen and not Marleen.
From the Netherlands. Marleen
Yes,
is
from the
an HR
Netherlands.
specialist from the Netherlands. Warm and clear, Marleen. Delivering
Right.
the message warm and clear. That was
Warm
my
and clear.
takeaway
Yeah.
from last month's meeting.
Yes.
Welcome, Marleen.
Well, thank you, Matt. I'm Marleen Jansen from the Netherlands and working for a consultancy company called 7 Trees. We have about 20 people working in financial businesses for us. And I've been going back a long time in HR, in education, in welfare, in production. So I've been around and I've been reading on this before to prepare. And we work a lot in the Netherlands with we call it the 6 V of leadership. But of course, this is in English, so there's no V's in it. But I'll share them with you anyway. Let me check where I am. Here it is. Hold on. There we go. Yes. So the first one is the vision. We talked about that before. That's the V. And if you don't know where you're going, then you cannot give any leadership. So that's one of the most important parts.
Mm-hmm.
The second one we work with a lot is trust. And we tipped on that a little bit, where you go with rules and regulations and procedures and control in a hierarchy environment. But I'd rather work in a company where it's based on trust, where you give trust to your employees and to your team, because then people will take, and that's the third one, take responsibility for what they do. If they feel trusted and they feel responsible, then they're much rather likely to do their best rather than they just have to obey rules. And if you trust and give people responsibility, then you also give them a freedom in how they do their job and how they come to the goal that you set. So it is hard sometimes to give people themselves the direction on how to go there, and rather than you tell them what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then in order to do all this, you create connection with your employees, because if you have connection with your team, then you know whom to trust, whom you need to give extra attention, whom you need to coach more than others, and who can deal with the freedom easier than others. Some people just need more direction. So I guess what I'm saying is that if you do leadership, there is not one style of leadership that works for everyone. You have to adapt your leadership style to get the best out of your people.
Well, thank you. So were those, did you say 6 V's?
The 6 V: vision, vertrouwen, which is trust, verantwoordelijkheid, which is responsibility, vrijheid, freedom, verbinding, connection, and the last one, but that I did not mention it, is veiligheid, safety. So you need to make sure that your employees feel in a safe environment. And we all know that with the discussions that have been going on I don't know if any of you have followed the Me Too discussions in the Netherlands lately, but there's a lot of high-end people fired because they did not create a safe environment for their employees. Let's keep it to that.
The 6 V's, and in America,
6
there's only,
V's.
that's interesting. So my last name would be Vandardi, something like that.
Van Doherty, yeah.
That's pretty cool. Thank you. I
Yeah.
love your perspective, Marleen. I got to practice your
Marleen.
first name. Repeat that.
Marleen.
Marleen.
Yes.
Marleen. That's beautiful. Thank you. Terry.
Hey, Matt. How's it going, everybody?
Welcome back. Can you tell the group where your name, where you're from, and what you do?
Cherry Lyons. I'm up in Boston, Massachusetts, as my backdrop hints. And I know Matt since high school age on Long Island and Holy Trinity High School.
Yep.
And I currently run my own business called Pivot TV Media, do a lot of consulting and mostly in the sports marketing world. Matt, one point I want to make, which I don't think we've hit on yet, I was secondly, but the black and white of this discussion, you have to weigh the consequences before you make a decision. And I'll give an example and tell us a little bit out of story. Matt's UNC guy, Larry Brown, was coach of the 2004 Olympic team, and 3 or 4 of our guys lollygagged and were probably somewhere between 3 to 5 minutes late for that proverbial bus. But in this case, it was the Olympic team, the national team bus, and Larry was determined that he was going to set the tone and decided to bench the guys in a preseason game against Puerto Rico on a Sunday afternoon in Jacksonville. It's really easy to look back in hindsight because the proper decision should have been to probably take the guys aside, let them dress, maybe not play them in the first quarter or half or something like that, and then let them go. But it was too much, and he was trying to set a tone. We won the game, but at the end of that game, 2 players, Tim Duncan and Richard Jefferson, asked me to, could we get aside? And was an administrator at the NBA and had, pretty good relationships with all the players on that team. But those 2 guys were more or less the adults in the room on a pretty young team. And Duncan looked me dead in the eye and said, "You know what? You just lost the team. It's done." So that 2004 Olympic gold medal was lost in Jacksonville, Florida.
Wow.
We went over and had our asses kicked. The next preseason game was in Belgrade. Lost to both Yugoslavia and Italy, and then limped our way toward Athens, winning 2 games in Turkey, and then got our doors blown off by that Puerto Rico team in the first prelim. And the team had totally packed it in, all 12 of them. So on one simple decision that seems black and white, there's a little gray. It was devastating. And it changed the whole dynamic of a pretty good team. And
that would have been the case maybe where David LaForce earlier said, you turn to the team and say, okay, what's the punishment? What should we do here? Do they play? Do we let it go? And then move on?
I like that concept. Certainly, I don't disagree, but I think it depends on the level of the team. I don't think you could do that at a professional level because the guys would say, we're not going to give up our guy.
Yes.
That's not going to work on the pro level.
Right. So what do you think? You touched on it, but what do you think should have been the response by Coach Brown?
I would have said a couple of guys were starters: Iverson, LeBron, Amari. I forget there were 4, but anyway, I would have said you guys are benched for the first half, and you better come out ripping in the second half. Mm-hmm. Because the problem was they were sitting on the bench in street clothes, and no one knew why. And then obviously the television got the scoop on it all.
Oh, so he really embarrassed them.
It gets broadcast out to the world. The few people that were watching that Sunday in the middle of the summer.
But, that goes back to core values. Mine are respect, trust, commitment, positivity. And even in a disciplinary moment, you still need to do it in a respectful way.
Yeah,
so
it was
perceived.
You sort of embarrassed the guys.
Yeah, and that way it was perceived as disrespectful to the players.
And I guess the point I want to make is just the total consequence of that decision was, it's not world peace here. Come on, but it was indeed an Olympic gold medal we probably would have lost to Argentina anyway, but they were a better team than we were.
Well, you got the feedback from the leader, and that was Tim Duncan.
Duncan and Jefferson were and they just said it so point blank, like, you guys just lost the team.
Yeah.
It was that simple. And it
Yep.
was in the back locker room. And it was sort of devastating, that at that moment in time, so early, after we were together 5-7 days at training camp, everything was glorious up to that point in time. We were doing community relations events. We were doing everything, players were starting to gel.
Yep.
Unreal.
Okay.
So,
Well, let's move on to the next hand up. Brian Kennedy, introduce yourself, please.
Hey gang, Brian Kennedy. I'm here outside of Charlotte, North Carolina, in a little town called Mooresville, which is a suburb of Dohertyville.
Yeah.
Good. We both live in the same town. My background was I came out of a military college, and we had a rule, if you will. It was an honor code, which said no cadet will lie, steal, or cheat, nor tolerate those who do. And we lived by that. We had several cadets each year sent out on honor violations. Some might be very minor, might not, but that was my background. Fast forward to my career, I took over a division of a unit. It was all sales to national accounts and regional accounts. And I took over about 7 or 8 guys. And I only had one new guy with me, and he came out of the same region I was in and had the same philosophies and principles and things of that nature that I had. So we were on the same page, which left me 5 or 6 guys who were always striving to take care of themselves first, which was the philosophy of their previous leader. So we had guys that were fudging a little bit on their expense reports to get personal things. And one day I caught it from this guy who was an integral part of the team. And I had 2 decisions to make, because the corporate policy said you can terminate someone immediately if they're caught stealing. And fudging your expense report was stealing. So I called the guy in, but I already understood that the philosophy of the area was it was okay to do those things. So they were being trained and counseled to do that. So I realized I had 5 or 6 guys that were on the wrong page, and I had to get them on the right page. And I took the approach, right or wrong, I took the approach with this one guy, and I sat him down. Name was Billy. I said, Billy, I got your expense report here. I see that this is a personal issue, and I need you to redo your expense report and take that off. And he told me, and if you've ever been in sales, you've probably heard this before. He told me, well, Brian, it will still be in there. You just won't be able to find it. And I told him, I said, Billy, you can do that for as long as you're here, but if you do it again, you won't be here very long. Then, I knew that this group was tight, which is why they were all getting away with it.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that he would take the message to the other guys. I also knew that one guy would challenge me and that he would point back to this scenario when he did it, but that was okay because they knew. The next guy who did fudge was terminated.
There you go.
After a discussion. So right or wrong, I mean, I saw that I violated the principle that I was brought up with, which is also a Christian principle, but I lost, I saw that, but I also realized that sometimes when we're trained in that, we have to retrain if we are.
Yeah, no, that was good. I think that was kind of go back to the rules versus parameters of David Force talking about that you kept it within the parameters and you transitioned the culture from, the unethical behavior to more, ethical behavior. And that's a nuance, understanding, and especially with your background from the Citadel. David Van Daff, you always are a good contributor. Thank you for being here.
It's a pleasure to be here. This is a phenomenal topic and one that I think about that pretty frequently, comes up in management, comes up in sports all the time, et cetera, et cetera. And I think we all want to be black and white, right? You establish rules, and the easy way to lead a group is, hey, if you break the rules, here are the consequences, and not have to put in any time or effort beyond that. I remember hearing, and I think about this all the time, and it was passed to me secondhand way back when, but the quote was, never lose a national championship over a six-pack. And I think about that from time to time. I was just thinking about that with my son's high school team, where there was a discipline issue that came up, where I think the challenge is obviously you want to follow those rules, but when you're dealing with an entire team, what a leader doesn't want to do is have to look back a week later, 2 weeks later, a month later, and go, oh my gosh, you know, as a result of making that decision, I cost the team, I cost these particular individuals a scenario where they could not achieve what ultimately they were trying to achieve. And I think that is a primary component of leadership, is making decisions for the best of the team. And in some situations, you have to go gray where you want to be white and black.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that I'll bring up is you brought up that bus situation at Kansas, and probably 3 or 4 years earlier than that, whenever that did happen, Coach, we left a player in Norman, Oklahoma. And we're leaving early in the morning, probably after a big Monday game, and I can't remember what it was, but we had a scenario at the bus where a player wasn't there. This is before cell phones, and prior to making the decision of leaving the player there was a huddle and a discussion of, hey, was there a wake up made? And back then the managers used to do the wake ups in addition to the hotel. So we went through, hey, was there a call made? Did this individual answer the phone? Yes, they did. Are they still not down here? And then the decision was made to leave. Now, with that decision to leave, there was also a trainer that I believe stayed behind, and that player actually rode back from Norman, Oklahoma, not on a plane and not on the team bus, but with the radio crew in the back of a crowded car. all of those decisions were made, but they were taken into consideration. And what I would say is this, is that player didn't have an understanding. Well, if the manager forgot to make the phone call or something to that degree, it was the player's responsibility to be there. But everything was taken into consideration before making the brash decision of, we're leaving,
Right.
Going from there. So anyway, I think it's a great topic. I think it comes up in our lives as leaders all the time. And it's consistently a challenge, making the decision that's best for the individual, the team, and so on.
Yep. No, that's great. That's great, David. I just made, and Stephanie, this is the quote of the day: never lose a national championship over a six-pack. I can imagine who said that.
Yes.
David Van Daff was a student manager on our teams at the University of Kansas when I worked for Roy Williams. David, tell the group what you're doing. You really, you know, it's kind of cool to see your growth from a student to this mature leader, business leader. Your insights are continually, you know, are brilliant. So tell the group what you do.
Thanks, Coach. I'm based in Chicago. I'm a director with the National Academy of Sports Medicine. I have worked in sports at Kansas and beyond at University of Tennessee, and then I got into the fitness industry soon afterwards, and have been with the National Academy of Sports Medicine for some time. Actually had 2 tours through. And actually, I go back with Matt. Even before Matt became a coach at Kansas, I remember him working our basketball camps. I think you were at Davidson at the
That's
time.
right.
Yep, and coming through with those pink shirts and leading groups. That's how we first got acquainted many years ago.
Yes, sir. Oh, that's great. Hey, thank you for joining. Brian Moran, you're back.
I am, and I love what David had to say. And there were a couple of references to it, but the idea of having a team that you can rely on, a team of leaders in your company, where they provide you diversity of thought. They see things from different angles that you do, because it's not always, as David pointed out, it's not always black and white. You have to have people that you can trust that will help you make the right decision. Matt, you and I belong to another group where we talk about the 6-second sacred pause, right? And to avoid that knee-jerk reaction. I couldn't agree with that more. I think sometimes the worst decisions that are made are those knee-jerk reactions where you see something happening, you don't have the backstory to it, you make a decision, and you're taught not to go back on that decision, not to say I made a mistake or I'm sorry. That's very 20th century thinking, right? I mean, the greatest leaders now, we talk about vulnerability being the new invincibility. When a leader today says, look, I'm human, I made a mistake, but let's fix it so we can get back on the path that we were on. That's the new type of leader. And a leader who looks to other people and say, look, I didn't get a good look at what happened. I need your input to help me make the best decision. That's being human. And I think that is a critical component to today's leaders and the people who are successful today.
Yep, that's great. Thank you, Brian. John Barnes, please introduce yourself to the group and then add your comments. Thank you for joining. I believe you're a rookie to the show.
I am a rookie to the show. I'm calling or zooming in today from Pittsburgh, but usually based in Cleveland. But I work for a large multinational public accounting firm. And one of the things that I'm thinking about as we talk about this and the parameters versus rules is the fact that, a large portion of our workforce is probably doesn't look like me, particularly from an age perspective. If you looked at the public accounting industry, the average age is probably 25. And, we're having discussions, and I had discussions with one of my leaders in terms of this, class of new hires over the past couple of years, and how do we need to approach that from our parameters versus rules, Matt, to what you referred to earlier in terms of, hey, we want to get back to the office. We want to create engagement and relationships. How do we do that in a meaningful way while recognizing that a lot of people have gotten comfortable with not having commutes? When the workday ends, whenever that is, it's an automatic switch, right? It's a 15-second commute either up or down the stairs or across their room. So I think it's very challenging for me in terms of how we lead these teams. And I think it comes down to communication. And we're being forced to, what we thought was one time doing communication one way is doing it numerous ways, numerous times. And, as I look across this, I see a lot of people that are probably in the same age range, generation as I am. And, one of the things that I always have to stop and pause is say, explain why. We have a lot of people just want to know the why. And it's amazing how just taking an extra 10, 15 minutes, which we all have, we just got to make it happen, can be extremely impactful as we go through this and emerge from the pandemic.
Well, thank you, John. And I appreciate you joining. It made me think that working in the business versus working on the business, getting out of the weeds. We get stretched so thin. We try to be lean. We don't want overhead. So as a result, people are overworked, and the leader sometimes has to jump into the weeds to try to fix things. And now they're working in the business as opposed to on the business. And that's something that I try to emphasize with my CEOs and business owners when I work with them at Vistage, is stepping away and be the visionary and have an implementer. There's a good book called Traction, which is the EOS, the Entrepreneur's Operating System, where that kind of teaches you the structure. And I talk a lot about great companies have a great culture and a great system. And that could elevate the quality of, you could have average product, average service, but if you have great culture and great systems, you're going to elevate your company. And so the time you just touched on, John, time. And I know as in the DISC assessment, I'm a DI, and Ds are impatient. So to sit down and take the time. Now, if I have a to-do list of 10 to 15 things, I'm preoccupied and I can't lock in. But that's the emotional intelligence that's so important about leadership, that we need to take that time and say, hey, John, let's talk about this, and spend that 15 minutes. But and be engaged and not be thinking about, oh my gosh, I got to get back to my to-do list. Well, if you're elevated as a leader working on the business, not in the business, you're out of the weeds, then you can spend that 15 minutes with John and make him or her, whoever, feel comfortable, feel emotionally connected, and as a result, they become more productive because they feel trusted, they feel heard, and they were explained why. And John, I'm 60. I just turned 60 last Friday, and it's weird, but old school coaches, they didn't explain why. They just said do it, and you were trained as a kid to listen and do what the adults were telling you to do, and don't question it. But as I got older, I realized, I'm not being disrespectful, but I just need to, why are we doing this? And then it made me more committed to the mission when I understood the why. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah. Matt, I was just listening to a recent John Gordon podcast with one of your former opponents, Jay Billis, and he talked about the differences in being able to adapt, and he talked about sitting in the room, as a now adult, and getting ready for Krzyzewski to rip the players and tell them they didn't do a great job. And he said he started to break out into a sweat. And what he noticed was, and one thing I took away was, he coached his players and said, hey, and it was a story about Mason Plumlee, and it pains me to give Duke references, but he talked about how he said, Mason, you can be a great player, but here's what I've seen great players do, and you didn't do this in this instance. And to me, that was a great takeaway from that, as to how to adapt coaching and leadership.
Yeah, well, Coach K is obviously one of the best, if not the best, to ever do it. And so yeah, that's I love those stories. I think the stories stick. Anybody else with a really good story on Nuance? And I welcome Kevin Kazaya from ASD in Hickory. Kevin, welcome to the group. I see Charlie back, Ray back, Danny Dolan, my buddy from St. Raphael's CYO and Holy Trinity High School. So it's really cool to see Kent, Robert, some familiar faces back in the webcast. Yeah, that's the nuance is the thing that I struggled probably with the most, because I was a rules guy, and it was either black or white. You were either on time or not. And one time, my first road trip at Notre Dame, as the head coach, it was okay, but games at 7, we're playing at Ohio State, national TV, they're ranked 5th in the country. We had, once the players were on the bus, Roy Williams' rule was once the players on the bus is rolling. So if the players were on the bus 10 minutes early, the bus was rolling. It wasn't going to wait for anybody else, right, David? So like coaches' wives, if we were on a trip, they would think, okay, the bus is rolling at 6. If I get there at 5:55, I'm good. But if all the players were on the bus at 5:50, that bus is rolling. So I'm the head coach at Notre Dame. I've been working for Roy Williams for 7 years. All the players are on the bus. The bus is rolling at 5. It's like 4:55. And we roll to the Schottenstein Center over in Columbus, Ohio. And, I'm sitting in the front seat where most head coaches sit, and I'm a big dog now. I'm the head coach at Notre Dame, this Irish Catholic kid from Long Island. and we get caught in traffic, and it's only like, I don't know, less than 5 miles to the arena. We're caught in traffic. And I see this guy walking across the bridge in a trench coat and a briefcase. And I go, oh my God, that's our priest. He's supposed to be on the bus. I left the priest at the hotel. Now I'm thinking, oh my God, dear Lord, I start praying, dear Lord, hey, forgive me for all my sins, and we ended up winning the game. But maybe the reason I left him was because we had pregame mass at Notre Dame, which was new to me as a coach, even though I'm Irish Catholic. And those of us that are Catholic, they give us before every game, a Catholic priest sat on the bench for every game and gave mass after pregame meal, just like 10, 15 minutes. Quickest mass in the history of masses. But they gave out a medal, okay, a medal for a saint. And so the priest is saying, all right, today's medal is the medal of St. Jude, the patron saint of, anybody know what St. Jude is the patron saint of?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead, David.
It's hopeless cases.
Yes, yes. He's giving us at Mass a medal for St. Jude, the patron saint of lost causes, hopeless cases. And I'm like in the back going like this, Padre, no. Yeah. And we went out and hit a jumper at the buzzer to win the game. It's one of the biggest wins in my career. So maybe that's why I left the priest subconsciously, but he forgave me.
That's funny.
Charlie, welcome back to the call. Introduce yourself to the group.
All right, thank you, Matt. Charlie Hawley. I live in Huntersville, North Carolina. I'm in supply chain, and I'm actually getting ready to move up to Northern Virginia for a new supply chain role. But glad to be on. And I don't have a story, but I was just noting in your story there, Matt. I think it comes down to defining who your key players are. If you're defining your team and your players as, or those key people of your team, just being the people that are on the court, then you might forget somebody who really is key, like the priest in that example. And there are the unsung or the behind the scenes key players of every team that may not be obvious to others, but it's important to make sure you know who your key players are so that so they don't get left behind.
Yeah. I saw someone's quote here on the chat. They said, quote from Mike Tomlin, the coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. This came from Brian Moran. I will tolerate you until I can replace you. Yeah. However, I might challenge that thinking, because if you tolerate that person, can you replace that star salesman? Can you replace that all-star player? No, maybe not. But if you're adhering to your core values, you replace them anyway. Do you have the courage to do that?
Well, and what damage are they doing if you don't do something about it, right? So you have to define success. Is success just the success of that one person, or is it the success of the entire team? And you need to make sure everybody's able to contribute. Yeah, it goes back to man over mission or mission over man. Yep. And I was talking to a fire department in Seattle yesterday, and they have there's a firefighter who is kind of moody, not really committed. People don't trust. And I'm like, well, you've got to, measure his progress, put him on a PIP, if you will. But then they say, well, they're unions, and we can't, once you're a firefighter, we can't get rid of you unless you've done something egregious. I don't want to live in Seattle. I don't want to live in that community, because I don't,
I find that so hard. And I'm big on, okay, Coach Smith, I played for Coach Smith and he measured everything. Whatever you can measure, you measure, and then he ranked you in every little drill. And so then you knew where you stood. And then we also did some internal voting, like who are the top players? You know, who do you think should start? Anonymously, and he turns them in. And so, and then I think the peer evaluations. Last, I quoted you, Terry Lyons, a couple times. Conflict is good. Unresolved conflict is bad. And so creating healthy conflict within your organization so that the players, the employees can really know what other people think. Whether it's a 360-degree survey where they don't know, it's anonymous, or you're in the circle and say, hey, we've got our weekly huddle and we're going to talk about, who said this? Stop, continue, start. Was that you, Brian Moran? Stop, continue, start.
I usually hear it start, stop, continue, but yeah, it's the same thing.
Did you say that, Charlie?
I don't know if I said it, but I've heard it many times. It's start, stop, continue.
Okay.
Start doing this, stop doing that, continue doing that.
Yeah, repeat it. Start, stop.
Start, stop, continue. Yep.
Start, stop, continue. So give me an example.
And I'm actually in a situation right now where I'm coming into a new team, where I'm joining a new company, joining a new team, introducing myself as a leader to a group of people who don't know me, and I've got to step back and listen to what they all have to say, and I'm the student right now, and I'm listening to them. I'm having them tell me, from their perspective. I'll give my assessment down the road, but from their perspective, what do they want to start doing that they're not doing today? What do they want to stop doing that they don't think is useful today? And what do they think is working that they want to continue? Well, Charlie, I got a great book for you to read about managing change, taking over programs. It's a bestseller. It's called, you writing this down? Yes, sir.
Rebound, From Pain to Passion.
Wait, how do you spell that?
And I think you should buy that book for everybody in the department.
I might do that.
I know a guy where you can get a discount.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Good advice.
Yeah. But does anybody do peer-to-peer kind of circle talk with your group where they can have conflict, healthy debate? Like, hey, David, I want you to start being kinder to me. I want you to stop coming in late, and I want you to continue to share your weekly report with everybody in the department. Does anybody do that internally with their team? That type of circle evaluation, circle share, creating some healthy conflict.
Yep.
Go ahead, David.
Well, I used to do that with my management team. We do like once a month, and I do it in a stand-up meeting format. So the whole idea is this is intended to be brief, so no one's sitting around a table because then you're getting too comfortable. You walk into the room, you're standing around a conference table. There were 5 of us on the team, and once a month I'd sit down, we'd come together and just say, okay, let's put it out there. What needs to be addressed as far as my management team? What is it we need to do better to improve our management skills? And I'd pose the question every year, what is it you're no longer doing? Because the only way you can get better is to do something different. So therefore, give me a list of things you're no longer doing, which means you've improved upon it. And it was kind of eye-opening because people are hesitant to make a list of things that they're stop doing, if you will. But that's the only way you're going to make room for improvement. Like I said, you can only get better by doing something different. So if you don't give me a list,
if you were head of a company that had union employees and somebody who was kind of a moody, wasn't really motivated, but you really couldn't fire them.
Yeah.
How would you motivate them? How would you get to them? How would you connect with them?
Well, again, it goes back to the teamwork thing that you're talking about. I think what happens is you get an environment where people are willing to work with each other and support each other and be helpful towards each other. And if Matt is the outlier, Matt's job is protected through this union policy. I'll just phrase it that way. But if no one wants to interact with Matt, then pretty soon we're setting up an environment where Matt doesn't want to be here anymore because you're not feeling included. Because most people, they just clamor for attention. They want attention, they want support, they want love, they want that relationship. And it doesn't matter if it's tough love or not. And so by people actually helping each other out, I guess the easiest way to do that, Matt, is I had a guy that wanted to get promoted to supervisor and kept coming to me and saying, what is it I need to do? What is it I need to do? I'd say, you'll get promoted when your staff tells me you're ready to be promoted. The people under you, they want you to be successful. They want you to be a supervisor. That's who's going to promote you, not me. I'm the boss, but I'm not promoting you. Your staff is going to promote you. And so that encourages the environment where people are trying to be helpful towards each other and be supportive. I'm trying to set you up for success. And by doing that, it doesn't mean I'm going to paint a rosy picture all the time.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you what you need to work on. I mean, if I'm really trying to be helpful, I'm going to tell you where you have opportunities to do so.
That's awesome.
And so that's what our stand-up meeting was. Let's point out where our opportunities are. We're not bitching each other. Where do you see my opportunity?
I love that. I love it. Stand-up meetings. Where are the opportunities? Yeah.
And just brief. It was intended to be a brief 10-minute, 15-minute meeting at most.
Yeah, I love it. That's awesome. Thanks for that share, David. I appreciate everyone that shared today. We've got 2 minutes. I've read 2 books last month, Jocko Willink, Extreme Ownership, and oh gosh, the other one I'm working on, The Dichotomy of Leadership, Nuance. That's where it led to the conversation about nuance. I'm reading right now, The Starfish and the Spider. The unstoppable power of leaderless organizations. Who's anybody in the last 2 minutes reading a good book right now? This is where you're all supposed to say Rebound from Pain to Passion.
I'm going out to get my copy.
I read that a long time ago, but I'm reading The Leader's Mind by Jim Afremow, and it's been a good book. For those basketball fans out there, I did read Krzyzewski's book recently.
Whoa,
that.
John, that's too much. John, that's too much. New guy. Hey, new guy. No, that's not acceptable. Promoting, you can say nice things about Coach K, but don't promote his products on this show.
Well, it was a book about the Olympic team and the transition from 2006 to 2008. So it was the gold standard. So at least it was not Duke focused.
Okay. Yeah. Nice try, John. You're going to be blocked, John. You're on perma mute from that next show. You're muted the whole time. I thought you were a good guy. You come in and all. The first 90 days, Charlie.
Yes, sir. Figured it was applicable for a
gonna
new job.
That is going to be critical. I talk about that in my book, and I'm sure it goes into much better detail than that book you just showed up. All right, listen, wrap it up. Thank you so much. What book are you reading this month? I think you should be able to get 2 books in before our next. Jason, what was that? What you have up there, Jason?
Sorry, it's blurry. It's Leadership Wisdom from the Monk Who Sold His Ferrari.
Okay. That by Coach K?
No. I only read books with authors with the last name that start with D.
D? Okay. There you go. I love it, Jason. Hey, guys, thank you so much. You have a great month, and I look forward to having another session with you all in about 30 days. Thank you.
Thanks, Coach.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Coach.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Have a good one.
Thank you, guys.